Thank y'all for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about social media and how it's impacted the last primaries in South Carolina. So Dr. Nelson, can you tell me how important is social media during our political primaries this year?
Well, we've seen social media become more and more important with each election cycle. More politicians are on social media platforms like Twitter and Snapchat and Facebook, and more communication is going directly to voters. So the politicians and their campaigns understand that this is a great way to touch individuals and to individualize that message. So we've seen it over the last 4 election cycles, just an increase in the use of social media to touch voters and then to get reactions back from them as well. It's very interactive. So it becomes very important to campaigns to get that kind of message out and back in.
How has it changed over the last 4 years, the way Obama's campaign ran social media to get in touch with young people to maybe today's usage is a little more maybe personal or political instead of just, hey, I'm going to be at this spot, you should show up?
President Obama, he used a lot of different forms of communication in ways that other candidates never had. So he used his web presence and email and those kinds of things, but then he also got on social media very quickly. A lot of it was donation driven. At first it was not just messaging, it was, how can we raise more money? And so you touch people with texts and eventually Twitter and things like that. But then it's moved past just that kind of getting people to give small amounts of money to actually getting messages through. And then what President Obama did, even after he quit campaigning, when he was in office, he began to use social media to help drive his agenda. So instead of getting into the White House and just figuring, okay, now I'm the big boss and I'll work with Congress, he would get messages out to his supporters and say, hey, you supported me in the election, but now help me get health care passed. And then those people would get on and contact their legislators or just chat on social media and make sure that there was a buzz around the Obama agenda. So President Obama really did move us into what is really kind of the modern era, using social media to target people, get feedback, and those kinds of things. Now everybody has to do that.
So as young voters, how did social media impact your choice in the South Carolina primaries?
When I started hearing about Bernie Sanders, it started out on social media. There's this one site, it might be less popular than Facebook, it's called Reddit. And it's basically a URL aggregate, so people just post links of whatever they want, and there's different sites on that. So there's a Bernie Sanders subreddit, and so you just hear people talking about the kind of stuff he stands for, and then that's when I started to hear about it. And then so once you heard about that, I started reading more just on my own and decided that I really would support him.
I can fairly safely say that I believe it will be the most efficient way of reaching voters from now until a time something more comes along. And one thing that I know is growing in popularity on the internet are memes, which are funny pictures with captions. And funny as they may be, I believe that they have started to take the place of political cartoons. And I know that our generation doesn't care about the news sources as much, partially because they're so biased. And they will spend their times looking at Facebook and Twitter, and they'll see those memes, and those have a tremendous impact.
Is it making politics maybe more of a social thing instead of just you go to a meeting and you hear them speak, you just tune into Twitter? Is it more social and kind of more a hip way to follow politicians now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. And to see the candidates themselves try and get on board with it, I know Bernie and Hillary both have Snapchats that they use, even on top of their Twitters and Facebook. But I mean, it provides a good platform for discussion among people who have similar views as you. And as I said, sort of a more unbiased, like down to earth, like from the people's mouths, not the media conglomerates.
It's allowed me to interact more during GOP debates and kind of compare things and look at her tweets and look at GOP candidates' tweets. And also comparing her with Bernie and how they react, how their campaigns kind of tweet and what they talk about during the debates. That's been actually pretty fun to kind of read that, really funny too, and kind of reading pundits at the same time and then comparing that to their tweets as well. It's been a really kind of fun, interactive way to look at the candidates and look at what people are saying about them.
Is it more of an entertainment thing now, or is it actually something that you learn from?
I know our generation loves to be entertained. They're used to instant entertainment, and I think that's sort of, it may be esoteric in the sense that older generations can't relate as much, but I believe it's going to have to be the way that the politicians reach the younger generation now. Like, for better or worse, we are used to instant entertainment, and if you can mix in entertainment with the messages of the politicians, I think it's going to like have a much bigger impact.
All right, let's talk about the demographic changing from the last few years. Young voters are struggling to get to the polls, or politicians are struggling to get them to the polls. Maybe a better way to say it is reaching out on social media a way to engage the youth of today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always been difficult to get young people to the polls. They're moving around, so they're not registered in places. They have other things going on. They're studying or starting families. So it's really difficult to get the youngest generation out. But with the ubiquitous nature of cell phones, campaigns can send reminders to people, because a lot of people just forget, oh, today's polling day. Well, I got to get out there because you've gotten a text or something like that. So I think that's one way of getting people out. And then I think, as Joey has said, there are creative ways of reaching people through humor in particular. I think that's really important. And then it gives a kind of cool vibe to a campaign that can really reach young people with the music that they like, with the images that they like, and can relate to. But I will say that while the young generation probably is on their phones a lot, I mean, older folks are also engaged in social media. Look at Facebook. Older people get on Facebook all the time and post pictures and videos and things like that. So there's still a community of like-minded people that works at different generations as well. Now, they'll not be into Snapchat. I'm sort of thinking. but a lot of older folks are on Twitter, but they're certainly on Facebook. So it's really crossing generations.
Has it maybe opened up a way for people to talk more openly about their political beliefs instead of sitting face to face? They have a little more boldness in posting on a Facebook status or retweeting something.
A lot easier for someone to post something about what they think about a candidate online as opposed to talking in person, not just because it's easier for them if they're more shy or whatever like that, but also they can reach a huge target audience and just very instantly. Whereas to actually talk to these people would take hours or days to talk to the same amount of people that you can talk to instantly.
Does that translate into wanting to get out and vote?
I think that's something that the younger generation, our generation, I guess, still struggles with, because people think that liking or sharing something on Facebook it's helpful, which it is, but it's not the same as voting, obviously. So I think sometimes they think oh, well, I was working so hard on Facebook, and then they just forget to vote or don't vote.
I think Hank has hit on a really important point, and that is that social media allows campaigns to target particular people. I mean, it can come down to specific people who have exhibited a certain voting pattern. Now, they don't know who you voted for, but they do know if you voted in a Democratic primary or a Republican primary and how many times you voted, if you vote every cycle or just once in a while. And then they can also get all of this data from Facebook and Google and places like that, so they can target, like advertisers can, individual groups or individual people and really shape a message for that particular person. So that's good in that it reaches everybody, but it can also have kind of harmful effects, because you're kind of locked in a group of people that just thinks like you, and you begin to think that the whole world thinks just like the messages I'm getting, but in fact those messages are really targeted just for you and the things that you like.
Let's talk about maybe some of the downsides to social media in politics. Donald Trump and his famous tweets that he sends out. Talk about that, how that is more helping him now than maybe 4 years ago would have been more hurtful.
Well, I think Donald Trump has taken us into a new era of social media, where President Obama and his campaign just kind of introduced it to the country. I think now Donald Trump has taken it to a new place where instead of just sending out messages about hey, come to my rally or something like that. He is sending out real caustic comments about other campaigns, other candidates. The kinds of tweets that would have hurt candidates in the past are now actually helping Donald Trump. So he has figured out that you can use social media to convey harsh messages, like what Hank was saying, things that you wouldn't say face-to-face to people, although Donald Trump says these things face-to-face. But most of the time, you wouldn't say them face-to-face, but you will say them through your phone. And so Trump has just recognized that, and he's now using it to his advantage and to a lot of other candidates' disadvantage, because they're not willing to say that stuff about Trump. But he's definitely throwing it back at them. So I think we're definitely in a new era, and I'm not real encouraged, because I hope the next election cycle doesn't see even more boorish and harsh rhetoric going through social media. What do you all think?
I think there is the danger of the politicians themselves saying something bad, but as part of an online, like one of these like meme type communities, there are dangers that you have a couple people that will post something homophobic or bigoted, like something that would reflect poorly on the campaign. And I know that specifically Bill Clinton sort of called out some Bernie supporters for their sexist remarks. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I mean, in a community of a few 100,000 people, you are going to have some people that are disrespectful with that, but in this day and age, those things can be brought to the light very quickly and can reflect negatively on the entire campaign and the candidate themselves.
I think social media has also, and not to be a negative Nancy, kind of created a culture in which people can sit behind their computers and belittle each other via Facebook arguments about politics and things like that. And it just really makes me long for good political conversation. I was in an Uber a couple weeks ago, and the Uber driver asked me who I was voting for, and I told him Hillary Clinton, and he said, I'm voting for Donald Trump, and I was like, that's, tell me about that. And we had a great conversation. It was so civil. He was talking about immigration and different things, and I didn't agree with him, but I wasn't angry. It was a really good conversation, and I got out of the Uber that night, and I thought, that might not have happened on Facebook or somewhere where you can kind of sit back and not really listen to someone, where you're just kind of reading comments at their face value. And it reminded me of how great it is to actually sit with someone and talk to them about their political views rather than over Facebook.
How important is it to y'all for your candidate to have a strong social media presence?
I wouldn't say it's too important, because like I said, I'm supporting Bernie Sanders, and I'm not sure how old he is, but he's pretty old. It's like I wouldn't expect most people of that age to be on social media. But I think it's important for his message that he's able to send it out to that many people so fast. So as far as him being on it himself, I don't think is as important to me. But I can see how other people would think that is important.
I do think Hillary's image is very important right now, and it's something that has been important from the beginning. She has a lot of baggage and a lot of things to kind of clear up along the way, and I think social media can be very helpful in that if it is used in the right way.
How could some of the other candidates maybe step up their game on the social media, or are they doing what's right with just kind of staying off of it?
So Donald Trump has figured out a way of bypassing all the filters, political parties, the media, and go directly to the people. And he does it in a caustic way. The other candidates either don't want to do that or can't do it. I think they could do it if they wanted to, but Donald Trump has made it very difficult for other candidates to feel like they're able to campaign normally when they have to run against these insults. So Ted Cruz and Ben Carson and Marco Rubio all have social media efforts, but it's not as effective as Donald Trump's. It's more normal politics. Come to my rally, I'm going to be in this spot, come and meet me. But Trump is putting out messages, usually belittling other candidates or trumpeting one of his particularly difficult policy positions for many Americans to get their heads around, like on immigration or on trade. So I think that's why Donald Trump is really shaking up the whole system, and it'll take a while for other candidates to catch up. I personally hope that they don't catch up quite as much as Trump is doing with the kinds of messaging that he's engaged in right now.
So Bernie Sanders is reaching the millennials really strongly on social media. It's where he's reaching out to them the most. But yet he's still not winning at all the polls. How does that, if he's reaching the younger generation yet still not bringing in the voters, how effective is social media?
I think that, it is helping. Bernie already has a lot of support, much more than Hillary, among millennials, and so I'm not sure that I can directly correlate social media to that, but millennials do often, not turn out to vote as much, and that I think is going to continue to be a challenge for him. But I think social media is a good way for both of them to continue reaching out to millennials and encourage them. I mean, the Snapchat filters on, primary day on Saturday were super fun for a lot of millennials to take selfies after they voted and put in the little box who they voted for. And, little things like that can be something fun that millennials used to engage. So I'll be interested to see how that continues.
Yeah, politics and social media are married forever. As long as there is social media, politics will have to use it. It will be one of the tools in a candidate's toolbox. It's not the be-all and end-all of every campaign, but every campaign will have to have a social media package. It's a cheap way of getting a hold of people, but it's still also expensive in that you have to develop a team that can work with it. So we're going to see it continue to develop in the future, and this is just one moment in the cycle. We'll see what happens in 2 or 4 years.
I think it will definitely be a milestone of the way that candidates reach voters. Like, you think back to FDR and the fireside chats and like the first televised debates that really swayed a lot of people. And I think that the influence of social media is going to be another one of those major steps in the way that people campaign and change for the next 50 or 100 years, the way that people primarily reach the voters.
All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.